Good afternoon, everybody. Pigskin Pete here. Happy Monday to everybody. We've already covered two conferences division by division. We've got the ACC and the SEC out of the way. Let's get into the Big 12. Yes, I know, the Big 12 only has one division because there's not enough teams to have two. The Big 12 has 9 teams. The Big 10 has 12 teams. I hope these people aren't math majors, but let's get right into it. Like usual, we're going to start with the bottom dwellers. Iowa State. Now you may say, hey Pete, Iowa State is not a bottom dweller. They beat TCU and Oklahoma last year. Well, good for them. Back to bottom dweller for you. Next, Kansas. I don't even really know what to say about Kansas. Will they win more than 2 or 3 games? Is probably the only real question about Kansas. I can honestly say I have never met a Kansas football fan. On to the next one. Texas Tech. The Texas Tech Red Raiders. Sorry, not going to win anything. Now, are they capable of going like 6-6, 7-5, even winning 8 games if they have a great year? Sure they are. But just like every other Big 12 team, they like to throw it all over the yard and try to score 85 points, but can't stop anything. And the best Texas Tech player in the past 15 years is right now playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. But the fact that he was drafted ahead of Deshaun Watson is a sin. Baylor. Baylor and Ole Miss are in the same sanction situation. What Art Briles has done at Baylor is pretty comparable to what Hugh Freeze did at Ole Miss. Now, completely different situations, both completely unforgivable mistakes, and both have cost their teams a chance to do anything in the foreseeable future. I'm not convinced they would have did anything more than a punchline to many jokes right now. West Virginia. How West Virginia ended up in the Big 12 instead of the ACC, I'll never know. But that's besides the point. West Virginia probably has one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12. Of course, now that Mayfield's gone and we have a lot of younger quarterbacks, Rudolph's gone, and I'll get into those two teams here in a second. But Will Grier was the one that got suspended when he was at Florida. He transferred. Cocaine is a hell of a drug. And this will be his second year at West Virginia. I want to say this may be it should be his last year of eligibility, if somebody can correct me on that. But he's a good football player. He's a good quarterback. And, I expect West Virginia to be better than they were last year. Now, like a lot of the Big 12 teams, they have defensive problems, and we'll see how that all straightens itself out. We'll see what they're really made of when they play a terrible Tennessee team the first or second week of the season. Nonetheless, West Virginia, this is not your year. Kansas State. Now, I've made several videos about Bill Snyder, and I got a lot of backlash. Every time I make fun of Bill Snyder, people come at me. They don't like me making fun of Bill Snyder. Some people get it. A lot of it's just a big joke. There's a big part of it that's not a joke, though. He's almost 80 years old, guys. There's no getting around that. He's won 2 conference titles in 26 years there as head coach. He's old enough to be Lincoln Riley's grandfather. How do you go out and recruit players when you're 79 years old and the players have no idea if you're still going to be there? There is absolutely no reason that I can think of for them to keep Bill Snyder there. Just because he's done a lot for your school and has been there for a long time and he's an icon there does not mean you keep him. You fire him and say, thank you for making us somewhat relevant the past 26 years, but we need somebody younger, somebody who can go out on the recruiting trail and get top tier talent and can eventually try to compete with the Oklahoma States, the Oklahomas, and the Texases of the Big 12. Sorry, Bill Snyder, this should be, if it's not, his last year on the sideline there. I hope the guy doesn't have a heart attack and die on the sideline. Please, Lord Jesus, don't let that happen. I really hope he doesn't. But sorry, this is not your year. Oklahoma State. So Oklahoma State, high-flying, high-scoring offense, a lot like Oklahoma. They're Oklahoma without the championship. They recruit great. They always get great wide receiver talent, speed, but they have their defensive problems as well. They can't really stop anything. They lost Mason Rudolph, who is from South Carolina, by the way. I'll be interested to see his replacement, how good he is. Something tells me that Oklahoma State will pick up where they left off and have another really good quarterback in there, and they will stay scoring a lot of points. However, Mike Gundy needs to do something about that defense. If only he could grow a defense as easily as he did that mullet. Oklahoma State always has the chance to have a special year and knock somebody off the top like Oklahoma. Will that be this year? I don't know. We'll get into Oklahoma in a second. Sorry, Oklahoma State, I'm not picking you this year. Texas. Hook 'em horns. Or hook 'em horns. Is that right? Like this? This is the team that everybody is really keeping an eye on. In my mind, Texas is on the rise. This is only Tom Herman's second season as a head coach there. I mean, it's customary to give a guy 2 or 3 years at minimum to see, if the place is headed in the right direction. Listen, he already made a massive improvement last year over what was going on before that. But being better than terrible is not that impressive. First year there. I think as he gets, they just had like a top 5 recruiting class, so he's clearly recruiting great. I think that Texas is going to give Oklahoma a run for the money, maybe even this year in his second year, and that would be very impressive. Keep an eye out for Texas. Everybody has an eye on them. TCU. Is it just me, or does Gary Patterson look like the manager at AutoZone? I'm no fashion guru, but bald guys should not wear visors. And either should fat guys. In all seriousness, TCU has been the first or second best team in the Big 12 in the past 5 or 6 years. You never know what you're going to get with them from year to year. They have inexplicable losses every year. They also have some really big wins out of conference each year. They've also had some really big bowl wins. Gary Patterson is a really good coach. But continuing with the theme in the Big 12, their defense is not great. Now, it was on paper probably the best defense in the Big 12 stat-wise last year. And believe me, lots of Big 12 fans love to point that out to me over and over and over again. No offense, but saying that you have the best defense in the Big 12 is basically like saying I'm the fastest guy in a wheelchair race. TCU, another team that's just a defense away from competing on a national level. Oklahoma Sooners. Lots of subscribers to my channel from Oklahoma because a lot of trashing I did at Oklahoma last football season attracted Oklahoma fans to my channel. Stay tuned for this football season. There's plenty more where that came from. I really ended up liking a lot of you guys. I gave Baker Mayfield a really hard time, during my trash talking stints. However, they are an elite football program. Obviously, they have a lot of history in national titles and all that, blah, 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 blah. But it is 2018. And sticking with the theme, you need a defense as well. I can't figure out for the life of me why you don't fire Stoops as defensive coordinator. Oklahoma hasn't had a good defense since Venables came to Clemson. The biggest storyline with Oklahoma, obviously, after losing Baker Mayfield, is this Kyler Murray kid who's coming over to take his job. Now, there's a rumor that he could decide to forego his football season and enter the Major League Baseball draft. Of course, everyone's actually expecting him to play football and see if he can make a run at the NFL. The head coach, Lincoln Riley, very impressive first year at Oklahoma. The question is, obviously he was playing with Bob Stoops' players and pretty much his coaching staff for the most part. Will he be able to sustain this? He's a very young coach. I think he's he's like my age. I think he's like 30-something. But anyway, this is the move I like to see people make. This is the move that I think Kansas State should make. All right? You get new blood in there, a young guy. Football is changing, people, okay? Young players relate to young coaches, and young coaches relate to young players. And that's important in today's world. Some of the most successful coaches, if you take Nick Saban out of the equation, Dabo Swinney, Kirby Smart, Lincoln Riley, very young coaches. What do they all have in common? Winning, recruiting, and winning. Now, I always admit when I'm wrong because I like to beat my chest when I'm right. So I will admit, I did say that Oklahoma was one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country last year, which they were. I didn't think that they even had a chance to keep up with Georgia in that Rose Bowl game, and they did. So I give them a lot of credit. There's your apology, Oklahoma fans. Don't expect another one. Having said all that, I expect Oklahoma to win another Big 12 title this year and most likely get back to the college football playoff. I hope we see you again, Oklahoma. Clemson has a very good feeling when playing against the Sooners in big games. Pigskin Pete, check it out.